Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Double. Today we're taking a look at the Synido Tempo Pad Z-1 Midi controller. Now, it is a pretty small Midi controller. It's got 64 pads. Now, they're not the real big pads that you'd find on the mini keyboards that I've talked about on the channel before. They're really touch responsive. It comes with a USB-C cable. It comes with everything you really need to get going. It has a TRS to 5-pin MIDI cable, and it also has a USB-C to USB-A. These are all the different types of connections that you would need in order to hook it up to, like, say, your keyboard or your DAW into your computer system in order to get going. This doesn't have any built-in sounds. Just to make that clear, this doesn't have audio. You're going to be using this to do, well, a number of things. It can do fun little light program displays while you're using it. It can control your drums. It can control your keyboards, whatever kind of sounds your instrument has. If you are working around an open microphone, they will kind of be picked up. You know, I have loud fingers, I guess. The soft pads all have different control options as well as transport for whatever DAW you're using. Now, I couldn't get the transport system to work well with GarageBand right out of the box, but I have a feeling that that's because I just actually have to go into the software and change those numbers, the CC numbers that play and stop and all that would correspond to. And then up at the top here, you have your different operating functions. There's mood, play, there's drum mode, piano mode, and then there's user mode and custom mode. And that's just going to be kind of how the unit works, how you're going to be operating the unit. A lot of people will just kind of start off with the easy mode, get their way in. Some people are just going to use drum mode. Some people are just going to use piano mode. I messed around with all of them. And in fact, during this demo, I even messed around with some of the different lighting that the thing has. It's not like it really makes a big difference to me, but if you're a performer and if you're kind of using this to trigger sounds, or you're doing a stream and you have a really interesting kind of setup with a lot of vibe going on, this might be kind of cool for you because you can visually show what button you just hit, and there's something that happens when you do it. It doesn't just click, you know? So we'll plug this into GarageBand. So that's keyboard mode. As you can kind of see, it's laid out like 4 octaves of a keyboard. And when you hit the velocity button and then use the arrow up and down keys, that's going to determine how hard the note requires you to hit it. So with lower velocity settings, you'll be able to subtly kind of dial in some of those sounds. When you kick over to the drum mode, you're still going to be able to control keyboard sounds until you actually select a drum patch or, you know, drum channel on your DAW. After messing around for a little while, it kind of was clear to me that all of my drum patches, all of my drum sounds were all over the place. So in a few minutes, I'll go over how I actually remapped in the custom section, something that was a little bit easier for me to do some finger drumming with, and even how I relit some of the keys so I knew what I was about to hit, just kind of keep track of what I was doing. But you can see all of these pads are triggering some drum in some shape or form when I have a drum track selected. And then when I go over to a keyboard patch, I can easily just hit the keyboard mode button up on the top and be back into keyboard mode and have the layout of all 64 pads be familiar to me and look like a keyboard, look like 4 octaves of a keyboard. So that's pretty convenient. I like this layout. It's pretty fun to use. So there's piano mode again, and just like when you have drum mode, you have to actually kind of swap instruments and modes if you would like the right view. So looking at a keyboard, you can get those any synth sound that you have. So 4 octaves accessible from the current view when you're looking at it in keyboard mode like this, like I am. And of course, I'm just kind of messing around, so pardon my random note collection here. But, you know, it's fun to just kind of come up with backing tracks or weird little sounds or whatever, you know? Now, sure, I'm not actually using keys. It doesn't feel like I'm playing a keyboard, but you get the idea, especially if you're just in a studio environment or you're just kind of writing out some ideas, demo ideas, synth sounds like this. Hitting the octave button will then take this 4-octave array up or down, up to 3 octaves. So up 3 octaves or down 3 octaves, but still having a 4-octave array, if that makes sense. Hitting the light button and then the up and down arrows is just going to increase or decrease the brightness of the pads overall for your viewing pleasure. Head over to Synido.com in order to really get deep with the software. Go to their downloads section and pick the operating system that you use. And I'm just doing this on my Mac at the moment. I do have it on my Windows machine, but I actually don't have too much music stuff there. So I moved all this back over to my Mac so that I could show you guys how to install the program and use the program. And it's pretty cool. I didn't know what to expect from the lighting section, but when you launch the program, there's a couple of different options. There's easy mode or custom mode. If you check out the easy mode, that's where we're going to be able to add music files to the actual keys. So you could load up 64 audio tracks, and whether that's 64 individual songs or a bunch of different songs, stuff like that. When you hit each one of those buttons, you're going to be able to program a little light show to display off of that button. So that alone is kind of cool. There's many different ways to get in here and have a different type of light display happen when you hit that button while you're in easy mode. And custom mode. I think it's custom mode. I'll leave a note right here of what mode it is that we're doing this. But you can even pick a pad that you're going to hit and draw a pattern of lights just like that in random colors that they default to. Or you can go in and pick the colors that you specifically want, draw your own patterns, do all that stuff so that whenever you hit a particular cue, you have a light show emanating from that pad. So you can also move over to the custom configuration and get real deep with how you're going to program each one of these buttons. Like later on, I'll get a little bit more into how I reprogrammed this to be a bit more easy for me to navigate when I was doing some finger drumming. But basically right through here, you're going to have the option to change the CC numbers or the command change numbers for each pad, or you can have it be PC, CC only, PC only, note value only, all of that. Make the changes, hit send to hardware, and make those changes stay within the hardware. Then you go up here to the top right section, and that's where we're going to actually do our individual editing for the unit and those buttons when you're in this custom mode. I'm going to stay on MIDI channel 1, but we can click through any of the pads and then edit what we're going to be sending, what information we're going to be sending when we hit those pads. And that's if you want real deep control. It's just as easy to do what I just did earlier, to pull up GarageBand or whatever your DAW is, and click through the instruments that you have selected and hit the drum view for drums, or hit the key view for piano keyboard layout, and then quickly and easily be able to do all of that. But you can get real deep within the tempo pad and the software and what each pad does there in that custom section. And then we can easily go back up to the top of our menu and flip back over to our editor and do the easy editing mode and all that kind of stuff. This is where we're going to import our audio by hitting plus on any one of these sections here on the top. We can pull in something to just kind of have to work with. And you can get in and edit the track once you do pull up your WAV file and start chopping it up in different ways and add those sections, each one of those sections, to a button. Or you can do something even deeper and have it slice it all up on its own into individual pads and assign it to each section of the audio is going to get broken up and assigned to a pad. I'll show you that in just a second. But right now I have loaded up 2 different audio tracks. And then down at the bottom, you can also import audio from down in the lower audio list. And this is where we're going to actually send audio and kind of work with it. Now, I don't know if it's the Mac software, but I was really having some trouble kind of trying to really precisely edit this track. I couldn't pick my starting point really well, and I think it's because I'm using a Magic Mouse. So I'm just leaving all of this in here just to let Synido know, hey, I'm having a little bit of trouble with the actual Magic Mouse working with zooming in and figuring out where I want to start my clips from. But I was able to quickly and easily go over to the slice mode and start manipulating it. I do wish that the slice mode was a little more beat mapped, like that it would listen for the one or look for the one, because that was part of my problem. I wanted to tighten up some of these edits after I had done these moves and put them onto the pads, but I really couldn't do all that. So you may need to work within a different editing software, or if you're using a Magic Mouse and a Mac. And then once you have a file that you want to work with, you just drag it right over to the pad like I'm doing right now. I just put one full song on pad 1 so that now when I'm in that particular mode, when I'm in easy mode, and I hit pad 1, it's going to play the full track that I've downloaded onto the Synido tempo pad, the Z-1 here. This is what this one's called, the Z-1. They have a bunch of different units, but this Z-1 is what we're looking at. It has all of these different options. They have one that has smaller form factor with slightly larger pads that does a lot of the same features. This is slightly more in-depth, but doesn't have maybe some of the sequencing features of some of their other units. But that's a quick look at what I've done within the software, just to kind of throw a few things on here. As soon as I hit a button, you hear the song that I have there. And now I can grab any of the other songs here and drag them on now that I've imported them down here into the bottom. And I can send the stuff that I have up at the top into the unit as well. So if we hit this home button down at the bottom, we are back at the device menu, and we can go over to the slicer section, and that's where things get pretty fun. I'll just use a whole track for this, but you could take like a single guitar chord and do what I'm about to do, or almost anything, a 2-second, 3-second thing, and chop it up into, I'm working with up to 64 slices because that's how many we can throw onto the pad. So you can cut it into 2 slices, or let's take this whole song and cut it into 64 whole slices. and then we're going to apply it to the audio, and then apply it to the pad. And what's that going to do? That's going to take all 64 of those slices and put them on each of the Synido's pads. So you can see here on the right, that's just a representation of the pad. If I hit preview, those are all the different keys. I can just kind of run through all of these different buttons, and each one is going to have a slice of that audio. And, you know, this may not seem very useful the way that I did it, but I'm just trying to show you an example of what you can do. Let's say you wanted to slice up a guitar and have 8 different sections of it, or a bass. You'll notice that what happens right now, when I hit the button, it kind of keeps playing itself over itself. That's the polyphony or polyphony, however you want to pronounce it. There's a way to turn that off so that it's just a one hit. When you're in the software here, you can right-click over it and over the word pad, over that particular pad. And when it says off, you see it just kind of keeps on going. But when it says on, it's actually, the polyphony is actually off. The polyphony is actually off. So the menu is kind of asking you, do you want to turn it on or do you want to turn it off? It's not saying the state of it. So if you have a polyphony on multiple pads, you'll be able to play them together. And if you have it off on these pads, they'll stop triggering. So if you're having trouble with why your pads keep going, check that. Right-click over that particular pad. So now I can kind of jump back and forth between manipulating my DAW and the instruments in there, or going over to that easy mode and pulling up the songs or tracks or cues or whatever it is that I have loaded into the Synido Z-1. And see, there you go. I hit that button, and there's that song, you know. And if I had the whole song in there, it would run. You know, hit another button that doesn't have anything on it, and that's how I've figured out how to make it stop. Now I can come back over and hit drums. I can mess around and do whatever I want. But like I said, this default layout for the drums wasn't perfect for me. So I just kind of had to mess around with it and make sure that I could lay things out properly. I also did have some trouble here. I'm leaving this in too, just to show that after a couple of times of opening and closing GarageBand and the software, the Synido software, stopped recognizing the unit. So I had to unplug it and replug it back in and kind of do that a couple of times, and then even reboot the whole computer in order to get the Z1 seen again. But then I was able to go into the Tempo Pad software and reprogram these buttons so that the drum kit was just a little bit easier for me to play. And then when I wanted to play drums, I could now go over to this custom mode. So what I did was I figured out what pads were triggering what, and then I would see, okay, I want this key to actually be this number. And I would look over at the pad that it was, and I would transfer that proper number. So I wanted to move the snare sound that was in one place over to another pad. And then I wanted to rearrange the cymbals and the hi-hats a little bit more conveniently. You can even go through and rearrange all of these colors. You see how I've made the kick drum blue when I hit it? I actually go and eventually make it just a blue button, and then it changes a different color. You can do all sorts of fun stuff in here with this. It really is like a visual performer once you start to program it. So now I'm messing with the keys. I'm messing with all of the different pads, all of the different CC numbers, because I wanted to lay it out so that my kick and my snare were on my left hand and were also on the same kind of thing. And then I could have the toms running down a row, and then I could have access to all of my hi-hats and cymbals. And it just took a couple minutes to sit there and reprogram those numbers, match them up to what I wanted. And after doing so, I could easily sit down and not only have all of the sounds that I wanted right at the finger points that I wanted, but also quickly turn all of the pads into the right colors and have a nice fun display. So now I know which each pad is, and I can quickly drum out a beat. If you're like me and we're struggling to find how to make those lights on the side go on, there's a little switch on the side there right next to the microphone. It took me forever to realize that that's where that was. Turn that up and the lights on the side, those mood lights go off. Push it down and then it's reactive depending on, of course, which one of the mood settings you have it set for. There are a few different settings based on what color that mood button is set at. So that is a quick overview of some of the features and some of the options, some of the things you can do with the Synido Tempo Pad Z-1. It's fun. I mean, it's really, I'm not having to go grab my keyboard and then figure out what this pad does and what that pad does, and just having them all laid out now real quickly and then switching over to keyboard mode is a fun way to mess around with whatever DAW when you're demoing a song, something like that. And then when you really get good at using something like this, you could really do some performance-based stuff. If you click on the link in the description, I'm going to have a few links down below. I'll have links to their website, of course. And if you click through that, you'll see some of their performance-based videos that they have. Some people just kind of messing around with it that have taken the time to program this to do what they want it to do. Oh, must be feeding time. I see the cats waiting for me. So I'm going to wrap this up. I know this has been a long video. I want to thank Synido for sending this over, and thank you guys for hanging out and watching the whole video and making it this far. If you have made it this far into the video, please feel free to leave a like, because that always helps let YouTube show me to more of you guys. And hey, we just hit 4,000 or maybe even more now on the channel. I just got back from a vacation, and oh, speaking of vacation, you can take that Synido and plug it into like an Android or your iPhone and do all of that. I forgot to even mention any of that. So I'm so sorry. If you want to see a video of me messing around with that on the phone, leave that comment below if you've made it this far into the video. But just know that you don't have to use just a computer for all of this. You can use your phone and your Android device, all that kind of stuff. It's compatible with a lot of different devices. So sorry for not mentioning that earlier, but yes, if you were wondering, you can use it with a lot of different devices. Android is supposed to be very easy to use with the Android stuff. Just boom, boom, boom. And I've had a lot of fun just messing with it. It's very easy to sit down and reprogram the buttons. That's always been a big thing for me, is reprogramming pad buttons. The software made it real easy. Click on the pad you want, click on the top right section there, start editing. Hit send, and it's done. It saved it. I did it one step at a time. Every time I would make a change, I'd send it to the unit and make sure that it was going so that I wouldn't get too far ahead of myself. I definitely recommend doing that if you're new at this kind of thing. If you're new here to the channel, please feel free to hit subscribe. It was really cool of Synido to send this along. Don't forget, you can use it not only with your computer. I should have taken it with me on vacation and messed around with the iPhone, but I guess that's not what my vacation was about. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think of the Synido Tempo Pad Z-1 controller. I think it's pretty cool. All right, you guys, thank you for being here. I think you're pretty cool. See you next time.